Hey, welcome everybody to the Perigee Virtual Executive Roundtable. It's been a fun series and I appreciate y'all joining me here this morning. As we kick off, I'll just remind you that we join for perspective, connection, and encouragement. So that's really where this whole thing came from. It was rooted in the idea that, hey, if we have a view of multiple businesses, is there some value in that? And bring that perspective, bring executives together where they can interact and get that perspective, connect with each other, maybe share a lead or some information or an introduction. And that's been happening, which is really cool. It's been happening offline. I haven't even mentioned that, but a lot of folks have been connecting, business is happening. So that's really cool, that connection. And then an encouragement, whether it's just an idea, sometimes it just takes you seeing what somebody else is doing and saying, hey, I could do that. You know, just expands your mind. It helps you get quicker to results and quicker and whatever normal is, right? Quicker through some of this challenging time that we have here. As you know, our format it's interactive, so we'll have polls. We're going to pass the mic and let people share toward the end. We have chat. You can raise your hand. We have Q&A, so lots of ways to interact. We do have this a little different than your regular Zoom meeting, if you're familiar with that. This is a Zoom webinar, so we have panelists and we have attendees. And so attendees, you can raise your hand, you can ask a Q&A to the panel, and we can even turn your mic on if it's something that you want to share in your camera and everything too. Panelists, remember your cameras and mics are live, so when you're not speaking, if you remember to keep that muted, it'll help with the noise. And also, if you wouldn't mind helping me and watching, as always, watch the chat, feel free to dive in there, share a link, whatever you want to do. Somebody shared a scripture last time, Jonathan, that was really cool and kind of, on topic. So thank you for your role and your support on all these. And then lastly, we have a hot topic and a co-host. So the hot topic is this week will be fun. We were actually just talking about it before we started the roundtable here, that it is be a good consumer. How can we all be a good consumer? And what can we learn from the front lines of the retail industry? And we were talking specifically about restaurants a little bit before the roundtable started. And so, of course, they're really seeing the brunt of it, the kind of a sub-sector within the retail industry. This morning, we will be talking mainly about the Gents Place with our co-host, Ben Davis. I have a little surprise on when I introduce him, but why don't I just jump into the introduction? So I'm going to read some of this from his website because I love, as y'all know, Ben is CEO and co-founder of the Gents Place, which is an innovative haircutting salon kind of business model. So this is off his website. So it's a combination barbershop, spa, and salon for men, self-described as an ultra premium and membership-based men's grooming and lifestyle club. There's a lot in there, right? There are a few pretty innovative concepts. He's franchised it. So the Gents Place has over a dozen, I believe it's 14 different locations. And one of them was hit by the tornado. So I think that a tornado here in Dallas, and they're rebuilding that one. So that would be kind of an asterisk on that 14. I think that's one of the 14. They're rebuilding that. And beyond Texas, I know he's in at least one other state. It might be a couple others as well that I'm not sure of. Let's see. So beyond the Gents Place, although we on this roundtable have gotten to know Ben as a founder of the Gents Place, he's also founded a couple other companies. And we've mentioned before, he has a hair or men's grooming product line. So as he looked at his wall of merchandise, he thought, I think I could carve out a space for my own product and even merchandise that in other locations. And so he's done that. That's the brand Rascal. He's also carved out, I love this, he took what for most of us is a cost center, and he took his contact center. He took his call center, he took his contact center and he said, I'm going to make that a revenue generator. So that's a separate company. And that company is called Res Concierge. And so when you call or text or all really modern ways of interacting with the Gents Place, technically you're not interacting with the Gents Place. It's an outsourced concierge contact center that he also started, and it also serves other clients. And now recently, of course, a good entrepreneur in this climate, he now has a company that he just started called Masks of Service. And one of the core values that permeates really all of his businesses is giving back. And so Masks of Service gives back to homeless, and with, if you think about it, they're totally exposed without masks and all this stuff. So that's really at the core of what they do. And that's really consistent with the Jim's Place that does, y'all may or may not know this, that as you've looked at the company and gotten familiar with it, that they really serve homeless and vets, and they do some cool stuff where they clothe them, they groom them, so they have free grooming services. They actually go, I believe, last I heard, they go to Austin, serve the homeless there on a schedule. So they have grooming services for homeless on a certain schedule. At least I knew they did that for a while. I don't know if that's an ongoing thing. So now let me give you the surprise. I set you up for this because it's really a bad surprise. Ben canceled last minute. So, but here's the good news. The good news is he and I really already did the roundtable, and I didn't get the chance to record it, but I took notes, and I'm gonna basically reenact our discussion. And as you know, he's a regular. He'll be on again, and we may reschedule him again too, and we'll actually do the interview with him. But yeah, he called. I'll just tell you real quickly. He called, and I'll stop sharing here for a second. So he called at the end of the day yesterday. He has, with one of his other businesses, he has just a mega deal and a proposal due, and they scheduled him. He said, look, he was gracious enough to say, look, I have some other folks there representing. I don't have to be there, but I just wanted to ask, if you need me, then I'll join the roundtable. And I said, you're crazy. Go to your proposal. Go get that business. It was a huge deal. So I'm excited for him, pulling for him. I mean, I think we talked about encouragement. There's some encouragement there, right? I love to hear about these people in this climate pursuing mega deals. So maybe we can hear about him as much as he can share about that next time. So why don't I kick us off here real quickly? We're going to cover a couple of things. One is the crazy consumer behaviors that we're seeing. I want to share a couple stories, some from Ben, some from the news, maybe hear from y'all. And then I want to talk about the business aspect of things too. So we're going to have kind of two takeaways. One is on the consumer behavior, because we're all consumers, right? And so it comes down to, it's like human behavior, right? So one is on that side of things, and then the other is on the business side. So let's see if I'm just going to check my slides real quickly. Yeah, I'll get to, let's see. You know what? Let me go ahead before I jump into the stories. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and I'm going to just kick us off with this poll here. Don't forget. So sharing on my screen right now is the pollev.com/Perigee. If you'll go there, and when I go to the slide and project it, it'll also give you a way you can do it on your cell phone, I think. And let us know, where are you? We have these 5 categories. You know them. I'll show you again in just a minute. Again, remember, you can do the QA or chat, and also we'll pass the mic at the end, and we can do a little round robin storytelling. So here's the question. Whoops, sorry. Yeah. So which of these 5 are you right now in your business? Are you in crisis mode? We'll start up here, top right. Are you in crisis mode? Or you're daily firefighting? Are you hunkered down, which is where you really already got through the daily firefighting? You're kind of weathering the storm. Are you pivoting and still adjusting, changing to this current climate? Or are you emerging out of it? Or are you really already in high growth mode? Maybe you're in that certain industry that was high growth right from the beginning, or something's happened and you've kicked into that. So vote for one of these 5. You can see again the URL at the top, and on the next screen, as we see the answers pouring in, you can text at the top. You can use your phone to text, or let me get my stuff out of the way, my camera view out of the way. So you can see there the domain, or you can text. Right now we're 50-50. I love it. It changes every week, actually. So this is a really good perspective. I want to hear as they continue to come in. I'll just leave it up for a minute, and we can let me start with the topic that I mentioned around bad behaviors. I guess there's some good ones too. Let's share those stories too, but I'm going to start with the bad. So did y'all see this news story about the ice cream parlor that had to shut down because people were so irate? They reopened, and then the customers were just treating the employees so badly. And they're teenagers, so they're just yelling at these teenagers. And the owner finally said, "That's it, I'm closing." And that's just one story. We had a Red Lobster on Mother's Day, was a terrible story. And then I guess it shouldn't be that surprising. It is just still shocking to see that at McDonald's and KFC there were stories of people getting shot. One was an employee shooting, and the other one was a customer shooting the employee. So just horrible behaviors we're seeing. I know a friend of mine went on Cinco de Mayo. If anybody went to a Mexican restaurant on Cinco de Mayo, you might have seen a similar experience. This guy is one of those people who rushes into crisis. And so you won't be surprised how the story ends, but he just went to pick up his order and realized he walked into chaos. People were, he said he thought there was an actual fist fight happening when he walked in, and he realized it was a woman yelling at one of the employees about their order. He said she was right in the person's face, yelling at him with a face mask on, and then she left without her food. And so he said once he realized that was happening everywhere, he actually jumped in and he said, "Hey, do you mind, could I help?" And so one of the guys who was working there said, "Yeah, sure, come on in." So he said for 2 hours, this a friend of mine, what a servant this guy is, right? For 2 hours, he stayed behind the counter. He was answering phones, moving orders, and doing everything they can to make the best of the situation. And then I love this, toward the end, as things were calming down, he looked at the guy who he thought was the manager. He said, "Yeah, come on back and help." And he said, "So you're the manager, I guess, right?" And he said, "No, I don't even work here." He said, "Just like you, I just jumped in to help because the employees were in such bad shape." So actually, I love that, because that is one of the good stories, right? We see the bad and the good. And so I asked Ben about this, and I said, "Hey, you must have some stories. I imagine with haircutting, people don't get too crazy, but at the same time, I'm sure." So he said, "Oh yeah, I do. I'm sorry to say, I do have some bad stories." So here's one quick one. He said, "We sent out a communication. We had 20,000 recipients. We sent it out to everybody saying, hey, we're open, right? We're back open for business. Please be patient with us. Of course, we're going to get a flood, but we're all hands on deck, trying to get everybody scheduled to get you in for your haircuts and all that." And so go ahead and start scheduling, and then you'll hear back from us from that concierge service that I told you about. And they text you and email you, and they're really good to lock in on the time for you. And so they had this one guy who sent 17 texts and emails following up from that, trying to schedule. I need to get my haircut. I need to get my haircut. So what they didn't realize, though, is their software inadvertently sent him to the back of the line. Every time he connected, it was just a feature, I guess you could call it. It was a feature that it treated every new interaction as somebody who needed to be at the back of the line. And so they didn't even realize that he was flipping out. So then sent out another communication saying, "Hey, please," they couldn't change it in their software. So they just said, just once, guys, like if you keep responding, it's going to put you to the end of the line. So we kind of laughed, because we thought, hey, that's actually how it should be, right? That you can reward and punish the behaviors that you that you want to happen from your customers, especially in this time, right? I mean, customers are just being so harsh on a lot of businesses, and what they don't know is that he had to cut 30% of his staff. He has a lot of his staff, they're still not fully employed. They're still drawing unemployment. They're still not really sure, like we were talking about before the roundtable started, what's going to happen in another couple months when some of the subsidy, the PPP stimulus, and some of the other government programs run out. And what's really going to happen? Are consumers really going to come back? Are they going to tighten up on spending, and how much? And so there's still a lot of unknowns there. And then, of course, some folks are really concerned about exposing themselves to the virus and in this environment. Maybe they are themselves at risk, or they are close to someone who's at risk. So anyway, all this stuff's happening. I just want to pause for a minute and, I have one more story that he shared, which was somebody was really critical of the Gents place, saying, hey, you guys took the PPP money. I don't know how he knew that or if he was just guessing that they took it, but hey, you took the PPP money and you still don't even have full staff. What kind of scumbag or what kind of operation are you running? This is horrible that you would take that money and still not be fully staffed. And Ben said, people just don't even know what they're talking about and they'll just rip into you. And he said, what they don't realize is, yeah, I had to cut some staff and I had to cut hours with some other staff. But that was strategic. I was trying to do the best for my employees because some folks can still get unemployment and they still, if things, God forbid, get worse, they have a safety net of unemployment benefits to come to them. So this is some of what we're seeing out there. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to ask y'all to contribute. And before I do, I'm going to go back to the survey here. So where are we today? We have about 20% in crisis still. Okay, so that's interesting. We had 0% last week. So we have either some people backslid or we have some new folks. And I'd like to hear about that too. Maybe we can, as we pass the mic here, what does crisis look like right now? What's happening? And is there anything we can do to, like we talked about in the beginning, to give you perspective? Hopefully this discussion will, to give you connection and to encourage you. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is encouragement looks different for a lot of people. I mentioned, I pray for everybody on the Zoom. If you have any specific prayer requests, feel free, just drop me a note. You can drop me a personal email or through the chat and say prayer. You can say what it is or leave out details if you're not comfortable with that. Contact me offline, however you want to do it. I'll pray with you. I'll pray for you offline, but prayer is a powerful thing. And I know we have also a mix of beliefs and faith. We have plenty of Christians on the line, but we also have plenty who aren't. And so I just offer that to everybody. And if anybody wants to join me in praying for these folks, let me know. All right, so that said, we have crisis. We have 40% that are hunkered down, still kind of weathering the storm, getting through it. And then we have 40% in high growth. Interesting. It really does change a lot week to week. I mean, I know we have a relatively small sample size here, so that's going to just make it kind of volatile. But just so you know, last week, we only had emerging and high growth, and that was it. We didn't have anybody in crisis or hunkered down, or even the fifth one. So that said, we shift back. I'm going to stop sharing here and open up the mics a little bit. I want to hear from y'all what you're seeing in consumer behaviors. Let's not make it too much into a rant session because I'm sure we can all share those. But if you have any just outlandish stories, we'd love to hear that. And hopefully you have some silver lining and you have some examples of the good in humans also.
I'll share briefly. In the real estate industry, what we're seeing is a pent-up demand still for housing. But a lot of the buyers are expecting to get a good deal in this situation and expecting the price point to be lower after we've come through this, but we're just not seeing it. And the sellers just aren't rushing back into the market. And when you think about it, when somebody's selling their house, they're opening their house up for people to come through and bring the virus and things of that nature. So we take an already limited supply of homes, we reduce it even further, couple that with, the demand, which is still very strong. And it's creating a very interesting market in times for us.
That's interesting. So you have some pretty demanding buyers. That's where you're seeing, again, the consumerism in all of us, is rearing its ugly head now. Where have you seen, Jonathan, have you seen some examples of people doing the right thing as consumers and being really understanding and taking extra measures maybe, to adjust?
Our part, we're wearing the mask thing. We're, making sure that people have, if they're sick, we're not taking them into homes. We're not putting people in our cars and driving around with them, Some counties here in North Carolina are restricting showings to only vacant properties, which again, that further reduces the supply side of the equation. And just trying to use a lot of common sense. If you're sick, don't get out of your house, but on the flip side of that, we're having a lot of difficulties because there are people who need to move. I mean, housing is essential. A place to live is essential. So, we're trying to balance the government restrictions and everything, as well as common sense and medical. And it's just really created an interesting time. And, if it was on a statewide level, that would be one thing. But here it's, Durham County is doing one thing, Orange County is doing another thing, Wake County is doing its own thing. And, trying to balance everything out with all of our clients and the people that we serve.
I think this is great perspective for all of us, especially as consumers. You don't have that big picture of what the businesses are dealing with, conflicting rules or different rules in this county versus that county. It reminds me of one other quick story that Ben told me about the masks. And he said, it's fallen onto political lines. And so you have some folks take it as a political statement, whether you're going to wear the mask or not wear the mask. And he has people just berating his employees that they're communists or whatever, because they have and they said, look, we actually have government regulations, and it's our policy here in the store. We're not forcing you to wear a mask everywhere else, but if you want to come here and get your haircut, we need you to wear a mask. And I think if there's one message we'll wrap up with, but is gosh, I mean, no matter what, even if you have really strong views on wear a mask or don't wear a mask, you need to allow for others to do whatever they need to do. And what we've done as a society is, because we're so polarized, we just have no margin for grace for others, I mean, so I'm just trying to encourage everybody to think of a reason why it would be okay to go against your belief of wearing a mask or not. Maybe if you really want people to wear a mask, maybe if someone has already had it and they're immune, they don't need to wear it. Maybe just accept that. And when you see someone not wearing a mask, give them that grace, and vice versa, right? If you're so irate that everyone has to, or the other way around, that no one should be wearing a mask, maybe allow for the fact that they're in constant contact with somebody who's at risk, or maybe they're at risk, or maybe they have it and they're trying to not give other people virus.
And I also view things too that, it's one thing for the government to say something. It's another thing for a private corporation to mandate that, like Costco. Costco has mandated that you go in their store, you wear their mask. Okay, you want to shop at Costco? Put on the mask. It's different from a government entity saying it, and the anti-government control manipulation thing that a lot of people have. So just like you said, with the barbershop, you want to get your hair cut, put the mask on. Let's just try to do our best to protect everybody. And in the county of Durham, again, if you want to see a house, you put on the mask, you limit it to 2 people at a time, and just try to do the best we can in this time, and all get through it together.
I think Ben had another story of a good human interaction about the masks. And what he said was, his customer who said, listen, I've decided I'm not going to do business anywhere that requires a mask. And so it's just a personal decision that I've made. So when you have relieved that or removed that policy and you're not going to require us to wear a mask anymore, let me know and I'll come back. And Ben said, that's perfect. That doesn't offend me. That's perfect. You're doing your thing. That's fine. You do whatever the best is that you need to do with the information you have, and you make your decisions. You're not vilifying me in the process. And so, we all have freedom to do what we want to do. You go do what you do, and we'll do what we need to do to protect.
And I think you said a key word there, grace. Having grace for the other perspective, right? Getting on social media and bashing people because they have a different view on anything isn't going to change their opinion. So if we could all just have a little bit more grace, what's that country song? I think the world needs a drink. Just, relax a little bit and have an appreciation for another person's perspective without, it's sad. I know there's some people on the call that are a little bit older than me, but, to think of, we can't have different points of view anymore without you know, the hatred or vilifying of the person. You know, and it's really sad that we can't, you know, agree to disagree anymore. That just doesn't even exist. Um, for a lot of people, if you disagree with them, then they just go off the deep end and talk to you, or you're an evil person, or you're this or you're that, just because you have a different view than theirs. So it's really sad that we and the polarization that's taken place, like you said, you know, with something like a possible cure, or whether wear face masks or not. I mean, this is all stuff, like I saw somebody say, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, yeah, you know, a lot of this stuff won't matter in 5 years.
Yeah, that was from the chat, Troy. Thank you. Well, hey, I want to move to the business topics too, but I also, let's see, we have 25 minutes left. Thanks, Jonathan, for your thoughts on that. Anybody else have anything they want to share, and maybe some encouragement also, what we're seeing the good in people too?
Yeah, this is Senior. I would say what's really encouraging to me is just the world community behind this, the global aspect of it. You've got hundreds of labs across the world racing to try to bring forward a vaccination, treatment as well. I think that's really encouraging, and I think, you know, the idea of being, you know, thinking more globally around this is a good idea as well. I mean, obviously we all have businesses in our communities that do business globally, and vice versa. We have commerce coming in. I mean, this is, to me, one of those great points in time where we're all, as a world community, looking at how we get through this. And I saw an interesting perspective, maybe some of you did, where it had from 1900 all the way to now, you know, what has happened in the world in terms of challenging times, and goes through the World War I, II, the Spanish flu, the Vietnam, Watergate. I mean, it goes on and on. And the point of it was that, you know, you mentioned, Jonathan, the old young view of this. Well, you know, our grandparents went through far more than what we're, you know, looking at right now, even though this is unprecedented. So there's some encouraging things to know. We will get through it. And I think unified, you know, coming together as citizens, quite frankly, I think there's, to me, that's the most distressing thing, is that as citizens, and there's such a divide. Obviously, the electronic world has created some of that with social media, but, you know, we're all citizens in this together. There should be no division around that that course, in my opinion. That's how we got through World War II and World War I, and every crisis this great country's ever been through. We will get through it, but this is
and even 9/11. You know, when we looked at the unity post 9/11, and then how quickly, you know, we've divided since then. But also, just to tag on to what you're saying with the cures and the vaccines and stuff like that, also how private industry has rallied around and pivoted their businesses. Some of them making ventilators, some of them making masks and PPE. You know, just it's really encouraging to see that public-private union that has quickly come together for the benefit of the American people.
I hope, just like with the great, you know, the great deal with Roosevelt, we'll look at a stimulus around infrastructure. And I think also real estate, commercial real estate's going to get hammered, I think, sadly, around this, because of, you know, the remote aspect of work, and probably the shrinkage of space needed or required. Maybe there's a stimulus around that for kids coming out of school, some sort of very low end rate if they turn those, you know, big office towers into housing. You know, there's so many different opportunities, I think, and that's the key, is to shift, as Ryan's doing a good job of, is us talking about the encouraging side of where we can go as a nation and a global family. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a call with my team today, and the main focus is going to be on the mindset coming out of this. Everything starts with the mindset. And when you know, what you focus on expands. When you start looking for a new car, suddenly you see that car everywhere on the road. So are you seeing opportunity in what lies ahead, or are you seeing doom and gloom? And I agree with you, Senior. You know, I think a lot of businesses are going to rethink the way that it's always been done. I think a lot of spaces are going to embrace more the work from home type of thing. And when they do that, the need for these big, gigantic offices is going to to shrink, and it'll actually help their bottom line because they won't have the overhead costs for those big buildings. So
Yes,
I think
some of the I want to hit on 2 points you made there, Jonathan. Some of the trends that we're seeing, and Charlie's on the line. I know he in his Zoom chat he had someone commenting on this, and that they do expect some of the remote behaviors, remote working behaviors, to continue beyond. So office space they are expecting is going to get hit hard, but to some extent, you know, it's actually a better efficiency in the marketplace. It's almost what a lot of us should have been doing anyway, and probably just didn't realize. Oh wow, we can actually be pretty efficient. It's just a cultural thing. We all have to be in the office, and now we're realizing, oh, what, you know, we don't have to, maybe at least not as much as we thought. So we'll see changes persist for a while, which is really cool. I have my first virtual coffee meeting this week with somebody that I was just getting to know for the first time. It was really cool, actually. I wasn't sure what to expect, and he took the meeting a whole different, he had some really thought-provoking questions. So that would be something I'd encourage you in the theme of our last meeting around your peer executive advisory network and kind of how you're doing that. And don't just show up and just stare at them and ask them, get to know them and be too informal. Have a thought-provoking question or two and watch where the conversation goes. It was really cool. The other thing you said, Jonathan, was about, I call it giving oxygen. So, you know, be thoughtful and mindful about what you give oxygen to. And so, especially in this time, you know, we can focus on the good things. I want to just, I know somebody else has a comment I want to get to you, but I want to close on this topic from what Ben and I were talking about. Here were our closing thoughts on the consumer behaviors. So we just wanted to encourage everybody to remember that we're all living in extraordinary circumstances, right? And that goes without saying. And so, you know, something you might not have thought of, I know I didn't think of it until somebody drew my attention to it, is that there are things like domestic abuse happening and people are stuck at home. And so this is happening way more than it was before. And so there are all sorts of dynamics that you just don't even know what someone's dealing with. And so I think Chick-fil-A has a really good perspective on that, how they look at their consumers, their customers. They have a great little 3-minute video if you want to Google it and find it. But you know, look past the face, look deeper and think, you don't know what all they're dealing with. Remember, we're all in it together. Remember that we've become polarized and we're all operating in our own independent echo chambers. You know, Senior, you mentioned that around social media, but really it's all forms of media, right? I mean, our news it tells us only what we want to hear these days. We get very little opposing viewpoints. And I think, like Jonathan, you said, we just don't even really tolerate opposing viewpoints anymore. Even our friends, we tend to select that have those same viewpoints. So keep that in mind. We are just really polarized. And so help encourage yourself to not do that and just be aware of it as you're dealing with others, that they might not have a lot of respect for your thoughts. The growth zone, we didn't talk about actually with Don Glacy last week, but
real quick, Brian.
Yeah, Troy.
I was just going to say one thing as we talk about, you know, there's a lot of things we can do in local economies, and we all talked about grace and being nice, but, you know, I've got a kind of a semi-unique journey as I went from IT into starting a manufacturing company recently. And every day I'm faced with the choice of, do I buy something that may be half as expensive in China, or do I buy it here? And we produce a lot of things here, but a lot of those things are produced on machines where I could buy the parts or the machines themselves from other sourcing or other countries. And in that situation, we've been really encouraged to just kind of really start trying to jumpstart our economy. I won't save 50 cents, you know, by buying something in China, and I'm not going to do that for the rest of this year. And maybe that's a lifelong change. And before, I was the one that was always, because I come from computers and I come from a land without borders, because clouds don't have borders, right? And so I have lived for 25 years in this idea that intellectual property doesn't matter. I mean, wherever you can get it, right? But in manufacturing and in purchasing and in quality and parts and things that really can jumpstart our economy, you know, we're going to make a conscious decision to, and it sounds so, you know, wear the hat kind of, I don't mean to be rah, rah, rah and my granddad, you know, but buy American. I mean, really, at the end of the day, where we can, we should try to buy American. And I've never said that public in my life, but I'm doing it.
Troy, I think it's okay to be rah, rah, rah. I mean, I think we need that. We need, you know, be about this great land. And so I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm all with you there too. And then the other 2 points we had were, we already talked about it, but respect others' beliefs. So even if maybe you're a globalist and you think, well, you know, buy American offends me or whatever, well, okay, but respect the person who wants to buy American, and vice versa, right? So we've got to allow some grace to others, and especially to employees, right? As you're a customer, you don't know what all they might still be drawing unemployment. They might not be able to make their own ends meet. They might be exposing themselves to health risks and things because they have to for their family. And so give extra grace to the employees, but it really as well as the other customers as they're out there flipping out. You don't know what they're dealing with. Let me do this. A little bit of time left. I'm going to just hit on the other point, and then I want to open it up for us to pass the mic a little more. But so the other point was more the business side of things, and maybe this is what we'll redo with Ben when we get him back. So the other closing perspective was on how to excel, how to exceed, how to achieve during these tough times. And so what we said was one is excellence. So we already talked about a little bit earlier that coming into this, if you're the businesses who are already operating with a high level of excellence are the ones who've done pretty well. You know, if you look at Ben's company, they launched during the crisis, they launched the hashtag Gents Grown Wild to kind of have a little fun with people who couldn't cut their hair anymore or you know, didn't cut their hair, their hair had gone wild and they were sending in pictures. They launched virtual happy hours. He pivoted to the PPE business. I just showed you the, what was it called? Masks for service, or I forgot the name of it. I said it earlier. And you know, you don't do that kind of stuff unless you're already operating at a certain level of excellence. And so it's never too late to be excellent. So you know, that was one of our messages, is just start driving toward excellence. And if you're not sure how to do it, reach out to those who do it and learn from them. Also, attitude was the other thing. You know, Ben was quoted, I found this after I talked to him, in Success Magazine in 2017, so a few years ago. And one thing he did say when we were talking and when I was interviewing him is he said, you know, I want to keep my peak emotional state because I know that I'm going to perform at my highest level and I can best serve my employees and my customers if I can wake up every day and stay positive and ready to go accomplish great things. So I don't have the list of what all he does, but you know, I want to hear about that. But then I found this quote from 2017 on success.com, which is pretty cool. He said basically the same thing. He said, they asked him, what is your secret weapon? He said, my secret weapon is my mindset. I have a belief that your emotional state determines your decisions, which determine your destiny. And every time I'm stuck, I connect those dots and remind myself that if I stay in that state, in the stuck state, if I stay in that state, I'm going to end up making a poor decision with a poor outcome. So I'm always focused on adjusting my state. I love that. I just happened to this weekend listen to a sermon. For those of you, if you want to go Google it, it was actually from a couple weeks ago now, but Pastor Jimmy Evans spoke at Gateway Church, my home church in Southlake, and he spoke on attitude, and it was just a great message. You might want to listen to that also. So that's really it. Our closing thoughts on those were build a foundation of excellence. I already mentioned that. Get closer to your customers and your employees. Attitude is critical. And the other thing I wanted to add to this is that life is a race, and I think we forget that. I don't know about you guys, but especially during this time, I just feel this acute sense of urgency. I just feel like I've got to hurry up. You know, I'm doing things, adjusting, improving, and I feel like there's a clock. I need to hurry up and get it done during this season. And what it struck me is we should just always be operating that way anyway, because life is a race. And whether it's about being the best we can be in our personal lives or work lives, it's a race. So I'll end with that thought, and we have a good 10 minutes left to pass the mic. Is there anybody who wants to share? And not, let's try to do this, not just you know, chit-chatting, but if you have something that you're thinking about, something that you're doing, you know, on one of these topics, we really want to hear about that. So I'm pausing and waiting. I'll call on somebody here in a minute if we don't.
Yeah, Ryan. So great conversation. I'm just enjoying this so much. So it's interesting, you know, the different.
Jay, real quick, I'm sorry. I just wanted to remind you, welcome. I think it's your first time. I just want to remind you to just say a sentence or two about what you do, just to give people
Okay,
context real quick,
sure.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
please go on. Sorry to interrupt, but I was
So Jagmeet, or Jay, as to some, I have a healthcare platform for hospitals and physician groups that reduces their time to bill by about 80%. So we work with hospitals and physician groups all over the U.S. We've had some, so being in the healthcare, it's been, I'm hearing some of the stories. We've been fortunate to have retained every business. We haven't closed new business this month or last month. But, I'm just happy. And one of the thoughts that you guys were talking about, was, I think, Ryan, you mentioned about um, a sermon that you heard, and, we have a similar belief. And I've been in the US for 25 years now. And it's funny when, I'm from India originally, and it's born and raised in New Delhi. And it's when I hear perspectives of folks here and back, when I compare, it's so much similar, and it's amazing. So some of the thoughts, and we have a similar belief. It's called Chardi Kalam, which means always remain in the spirit of upward and forward. Never despair. So I think, and that's so important, especially in these kind of times. So I'd love to share that. Other than that, I think from a pure business perspective, um, we've not been able to close new business, but everybody is very positive. We've had, I think, a couple of clients who came and said, "Can you suspend our accounts?" And we said, "You know what? Just keep using it. That's whatever little we can do to contribute. You guys in the front, because as you know, the elective surgeries got canned, and the government started, now it started again, but it was stopped for quite a bit. And so I actually have an email that says, "Hey, I won't be getting back to work before July." So that's very interesting to do that and hear from the doctors also. Just one thing, dealing with doctors all the time, they do say that we have a, um, they say to practice caution. And one of the things that, that us versus them and government and mandate and lockdown and blah, 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 very simple. How can I contribute? And, the mask thing, I totally agree, to each his own. I'm not trying to say do this, do that, but it's very simple. The mask is not for you to not get it. The mask is for, in case you have it, you don't know it, you don't spread it. So it's just being responsible. I wish I had some means to get that across, but again, to each his own. So from a business perspective, I think we are blessed, we are happy. And I have 4 parents at home. My wife's mom was visiting from Canada. My parents are here from India. My uncle's here, and everybody's here because there are no flights going to India. So we are all over here. So we are being extra cautious, especially with the elderly at home. They're all, 75, 80 years old. So we're just being extra cautious. So yeah, just a few thoughts over there. Great group. I love the thoughts everybody's been sharing across. I just want to take a couple of minutes to speak on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Well, I think, the spirit of what we're doing, the why, I mentioned it's for perspective, connection, and encouragement, but really the why behind that, or beneath that, is so that we can accelerate, right? We don't get caught up on challenges, we don't spin or backtrack, or we are here to help sharpen each other and help us accelerate to what we're trying to accomplish, and be a support and help each other. So let's see, we have another, probably could get in 1 or 2 more. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Ryan. I just want to say one word from. Did you say your name was Jay or Jagmeet?
He goes.
Both work.
Well, Jagmeet, I just wanted to.
He lets us off the hook and lets us call him Jay, but Jagmeet is his name, right? Did I say it right?
That's true. That's true. Means friend of the world.
Friend to the world. You are a friend of the world. I met Jay or Jagmeet at our co-working space at Spaces, and we just really hit it off. Some people, they're there, they want to interact with other people. Some people put their heads down and walk to their office, right? And then, but others take a minute. So we had a coffee meeting. We said, tell us about your business, and we had some referrals and connections happening there. And he's just always been a happy, shining, positive person, and we've really enjoyed getting to know each other. So.
Well, likewise, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, can you repeat that statement one more time? That you said your belief about focusing.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. The literal, it's Punjabi, my native language. I'm from north of India,
Yeah.
But basically what it means is always be in your, mentally, spiritually, always be upward and forward, and
Mm.
never enter the state of despair. That's like, as Sikhs, I'm a Sikh, Sikh. You can Google it. I'll put it on the chat here. But it's like you never enter despair. You always, move forward and in God's will, and So I think that's helped a lot, especially in these times.
Mhm.
Those kind of positive thoughts help a lot. Come what may, I'm going to power through this, and whether it's business, personal, whatever, I'm just going to keep going. So that's pretty much what it is.
I really appreciate you sharing that, and I just wanted to. There's a word that's kind of been running around in my heart and my spirit. It's just the word fortitude, and
Hmm.
just the fortitude to keep on swinging and keep on trying and keep on, even just the attempt to try to be kind when everyone else is fatiguing and everyone else is really struggling. And I just wanted to say we're all in this together. We're all brothers. We're one people, right? There's definitely a global sense, I think, right now of we're in this together, and not quite literally the economy, but also just as people, as humans, and like you mentioned, Jay, like just the it almost takes like a guttural sense of like just hard grit and will just to be kind, right?
Right.
I think it's worth the fight. So I just wanted to say that what you said super resonated with me, and I really appreciate you dropping that in the chat box. And
Awesome, awesome.
thanks
No,
for
I'm saying, as I told you, I'm seeing this all the time. It's all these countries, all this, like, it's like I see the people are the same everywhere. It's like I've never seen any difference, in how people react and work.
I think too, gratitude, I think, will help too, to really keep in mind what Ryan was saying, that there's so many of us that aren't as fortunate as us. Let's just face it. There's some people that are stuck in an apartment with 5 children and a husband and wife without jobs. And you talk about scary. So gratitude for me helps me, one, get beyond thinking just about myself. And I think, I'll share something. Some of the worst decisions I've ever made is when I was only thinking about myself, business, contract, whatever. And so turning that around and thinking about the other person and trying to create win-wins with kindness and perspective on gratitude, I think, is what a lot of people need. And we're all running into those service providers out there that are, they're having to do their jobs. It's amazing. So just the kindness we can share with them, I think puts a good place for all of us to be.
Yeah, I think y'all both hit on both attitude and gratitude are a decision that you make. And some of us have to make that decision more often, or maybe your circumstances, are pulling you to not make that decision. That's actually in that sermon, now that I think about it, that he talks about it's a decision you make. He talks about POW prisoners and folks that are who've been through incredible trials. Of course, we read about them in the Bible also, and yet they had a spirit of gratitude, even in the midst of all of that. And you think about, a lot of us believe the lie that, well, when I get X or when I reach Y or whatever, then I'll be grateful. Then I'll be kind to people. And as he points out, we all know it's a decision that you make all the time. And actually, the people who've lived through these terrible things and show gratitude during that prove that it's not a matter of your circumstances. So I think that's a really good parting thought. I do want to say one other quick thing. The story I told, it worked out perfectly because Andrew wasn't on the Zoom when I told the story earlier. I'll tell you that story about the guy who jumped behind the counter. So that was Andrew. You gotta love him, right? He's a hero of our time. Really cool, rushes toward danger. I told your story. And the thing that I forgot to, or that I didn't mention, that it just came to me too, that I remembered, he said, Ryan, what really got me so impassioned about it, one of the things, and I just got so worked up about, is that this was not about hunger. If they were hungry, there was a store right next door. There was a sandwich shop or something. They could have just gone and gotten a sandwich, no problem. We're in America, and it's on the point of this gratitude. And, it's the sense of entitlement. It was about convenience. It wasn't about hunger. And so, if we would just be thankful for the first world problems that we have, not being able to get a taco when I need it on Cinco de Mayo, darn it. Like, if we would be thankful that those are the problems we have and not, I haven't eaten in 5 days or whatever it may be. So, Andrew, I know you probably wouldn't have wanted me to share the story and tell it was you, but I want to thank you. That was really cool. Just want to recognize you for that. And I know everybody on the line too wants to thank you for that. It was really cool. Thank you.
Super thankful for the kind words, Ryan. That's awesome, man.
And I'm going to wrap us up and remind you, we do this every week. The model, of course, we had our co-hosts, extenuating circumstances. I thought about a last minute substitution, but I thought we'd try it this way instead. Let me know your feedback on how this is going. Tell a friend, tell a couple friends, tell your whole network, whatever works for you. And next week we'll be talking about culture and employee engagement, and the topic is still kind of forming. But our co-host will be Brian Audia, and so he's a expert in this area. He serves a lot of different businesses and helps them implement different culture metrics and things like that. You've all done the personality assessments and things, and so he'll bring that perspective to us. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. Also around co-hosts, if you or anyone you know, don't be shy. I probably already have you in mind that I want to ask you to be a co-host. So if you think, hey, yeah, sure, I'd want to do that, or anyone you know, let me know. Not hard criteria, but basically the criteria we're looking for is somebody who has a kind of a perch to see across multiple businesses. We kind of focus in on the mid-market, so, but not hard, that's not a hard focus. So if they're a little bigger, that's fine. If they're mom and pop, that's okay too. But what we find is, especially in the mid-market, that's where folks have a real platform to impact people personally. And usually there's a good span of control where the executives and those mid-sized businesses, they can make a lot of decisions for the whole company. It's different than a big company, and it's different than a mom and pop. So anyway, keep that in mind. If you have a topic you're passionate about, hopefully it's around business and success and achieving results. We want to hear about that too. So thank you all so much. I'll stay on and turn out the lights if anybody wants to chat for a minute, but otherwise we're adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.